Welcome to the channel, and welcome back to another Midgard Heroic Battles Battle Report, where today we'll be going into the fantasy realm, where the kingdoms of men will be facing off against the undead. And today we'll be taking a page from the YouTube channel Basement 1908, where he has a very medieval fantasy world that he's created, and does various narrative focused stories based on the kingdoms in his world. So we'll be doing something similar to that, by having a narrative and story focused on this battle. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So today's battle will be taking place on the border of the Kingdom of Hydd Calon, which is a human kingdom, and the story for this will be a horde of undead led by a necromancer has begun to come out of the place called the Barrow Marshes, which is an ancient swamp marsh that held many ancient barrow mounds that was then flooded by swamp and marshes, or at least it was flooded by eventual rain and water, becoming a marsh and swamp, thereby sinking the barrow mounds beneath them. But a necromancer has now come out with an army, and he aims to leave the Barrow Marshes and lay waste to the Kingdom of Hydd Calon. So the king, in his glory and wisdom, has sent out a elite vanguard force to meet that threat and quash it before it can gain more strength and wreak havoc on his lands. So that will lead into the scenario where the undead, led by the necromancer, will be coming in from this side of the table, and his goal is to get as many units into the Hydd Calon deployment zone, which will be over here. The game will be 6 turns, and by the end of 6 turns, if neither army is destroyed by becoming 0 reputation, each unit of the undead in the Hydd Calon deployment zone will reduce the reputation of the enemy, or reduce the reputation of Hydd Calon by each unit. So 1 unit in deployment zone, 1 reputation lost, and so forth. So, and then Hydd Calon's objective is to simply prevent the undead forces from entering the deployment zone, therefore venturing, getting past their defenses and wreaking havoc on the kingdom. So, with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the armies and then get on to the battle. And here we have 300 points of Barrow Marshes undead, with a total of 8 reputation tokens And leading the force will be the Necromancer. He is a level 3 hero. He has the Army Commander and Sorcery traits. His spells are Raise Dead and Weakness. And he will have a reputation of 3 units, consisting of a unit of skeleton warriors there in the back. They are heavy infantry, armor 2, and they have the fearsome and relentless trait. Next up, we have a unit of specters. They are heavy infantry with armor 4. They have the fearsome, relentless, and aura of dread traits. And then lastly for this contingent, we have the Grave Guard. These are heavy infantry as well with armor 3. They have the fearsome, relentless, and spears as tribute traits. So that is the Necromancer's contingent. Next up we have a level 2 vampire, and she is leading, or she has the trait Hold Fast. That'll basically be a kind of regeneration from her, since in Total War, or Warhammer I should say, vampires are, you know, necromancers in their own way, right? So they're able to raise the dead. So I figured the Hold Fast trait would be a good fill-in trait to represent keeping her undead regenerated. So that is her. She is a unit of skeletons and Graveguard as well. Lastly, we have a level 3 vampire ghoul. He has the trait Battle Smiter. So he is the hero slayer of the group. And then he is leading 2 units of crypt ghouls. They are heavy infantry with armor 3 and the fearsome and impetuous traits. They are, unlike the rest of the undead, they do not have relentless, as they are a little more they're a little more aware, I should say, knowing when to run, but also having a vicious thirst for, or hunger for, flesh. So that is how I represent them. And then lastly, we have Cryptors. And for them, I'm using the Heavy Riders Knights trait to represent them, armor 4. And then I haven't really edited them too much, given them any sort of traits. I think I gave them the impetuous trait as well, if regular knights do not already have that. No, they do not. Yeah. So I just gave them the impetuous trait as well to represent that ravenous hunger that the ghouls have. And that is 300 points of Barrow Marshes Undead. On to the Kingdom of Hydd Calon. And here is 300 points of Hydd Calon, the Kingdom of Men. They have a total of 9 reputation tokens. And then leading the force day will be General Callenbrook. He is a level 3 hero. He has the Army Commander trait, Mounted and Flying. can see he's on a Pegasus. And then he is leading a contingent of just 2 units, as he is the elite commander and will be used as the hammer to the anvil. So he is leading a unit of knights here in the back. They are the Heavy Riders Knights profile. Nothing else added to them. Armor 4. And then lastly, we have a unit of Pegasus Knights. They have the Heavy Riders Knights trait or profile as well, but I went ahead and did some edits to the profile to better represent Pegasus Knights. So I've given them the fly trait, and then I've changed their thunderous charge to swooping charge or diving charge. What that means is they will be able to perform 2 diving charges, and in order to perform those, it'll have to be a swooping attack from them. So instead of the first round of melee, it'll be their first and second round of melee, while the rest of the thunderous charge traits apply. So we'll see how that works. I think it'll work fine. We'll see how it goes. So that is his contingent. Next up, we have a level 3 hero, the Sorceress. She has the traits, she has armor 2, and she has the traits sorcery. And I have given her enchantment and protection for her spells. And she is leading a contingent of 3 units. We have a unit of Foot Knights. They are heavy infantry with armor 4, and they have the traits Spears as Tribute. Next up, we have Peasant Militia. They are heavy infantry with armor 2, and their traits are Pikes and Reluctant. And then lastly, we have a unit of Crossbowmen. Warriors, Formed Archers, armor 3 with crossbows. And then next up, we have, for our last contingent, we have a Minor Hero level 2. He has the traits Mounted, armor 4, and no other traits. He's just a minor hero to boost giving Mighty Deed commands. And his contingent consists of Foot Knights, Peasant Militia, and another unit of Crossbowmen. And that is 300 points of the Kingdom of Hydd Calon. So with that, let's go ahead and deploy and begin the battle. Alright, the forces have deployed. The forces of Hydd Calon are the defenders, so they deployed first, with the Sorceress and her contingent on the right flank, filling in alongside the rocks to prevent any flanking, with the Cavalry and Pegasus Knights in the center, going to make a clash for the middle. And then over here on the left, I have the Captain's contingent on the far left to prevent any flanking maneuvers or any undead trying to sneak into the deployment zone. And then for the undead, we have the Necromancer and Vampire Ghoul and their contingents in the center open field area to meet the cavalry and opposing forces, while my regular Vampire Lord is over on the right flank, looking to march through the swamp and into the enemy deployment zone. So, with that, we shall go ahead and get started with the attackers. Turn 1. Alright, end of attackers' movement. The undead ghouls push forward. Twice for the ghouls, once for the crypt horrors, along with the ghoul vampire. Had to expend 2 of my mighty deeds to get them moving. And then over here in the center, for the Necromancer's forces, I had to spend all my mighty deeds just to get them to move forward once. So the Necromancer's control over the undead is not quite as firm as he would like it to be. So they were reluctant to push forward. And then on the far right, once again, had to expend all of my mighty deeds for the vampire to get the Graveguard forward, while the skeletons are lagging behind, which could alter the game. We will see. So that is all of the movement for the undead. And I have no skirmish fire, and there is no combat. No spells to be had either. So with that, we go on to defenders movement. And here we are at the end of Hydd Calon's movement phase. Over here on the right, the sorceress has moved up cautiously. Crossbowmen moved up a little bit just to get in range of the ghouls. They are preparing to guard the flanks of the charging units, which is in the front. General Callenbrook moved forward. The knights made a double move, but didn't go their full movement with their second movement, as they're being cautious with the mob of undead coming their way. While the Pegasus Knights threw all caution to the wind and charged the biggest unit in the opposing enemy force, doing a sweeping attack on the Crypt Horrors. So that'll be the only combat for this round. Had to expend 1 mighty deed over here on the left to get some forces moving, which I did, pushing forward twice, I believe. Yes, move forward twice to get them up, as they just moved up a little bit to guard either flank, depending on where they're needed. While the crossbowmen over here have moved forward twice to get some shots in on the Graveguard. So, with that, there's no skirmish fire, so we'll go into combat. Alright, Pegasus Knights make a swooping attack on the Crypt Horrors, so they will be getting all 10 of their dice, hitting on 4s for the Thunderous Dive, and that'll be it. And because it is a swooping attack, the Crypt Horrors will be fighting on half combat dice for a total of 5. So, let's go ahead and roll them out. First up, Pegasus Knights. for a total of 6, and then re-rolling because of his thunderous dive for nothing. All right, for a total of 6 hits on the Crypt Horrors. And then the Crypt Horrors will get 4 support saves, I believe. Yep, 2d6 support saves for each unit within half a spear throw, being the Crypt Ghouls. And they manage to cancel out one of those attacks, bringing it down to 5 hits on with the Pegasus Knights. Alright, and then the Crypt Horrors will fight back. They are just standard hitting on 5s. No re-rolling, because I don't consider this a counter charge against a flying unit. If you think that's different, let me know in the comments. So let's go ahead and roll them out. Ooh, and they actually get 3 hits, which is not bad. But unfortunately it is not enough to do damage to the Pegasus Knights with armor 4. But the Pegasus Knights do 1 damage to the Crypt Horrors, as they take 1 point of stamina loss, and they lose, which then allows the Pegasus Knights to make 1 full movement in any direction. So they will go ahead and do that. And here is where the Pegasus Knights end up, at the edge of the board after making a full movement above the Crypt Horrors, managing to get behind the undead forces, hopefully to swing around and make another attack. So with that, combat is finished for turn 1, and we now go into the shooting phase, where it'll be just the defenders firing in on the undead. So let's get to it. Alright, first up for the crossbowmen over here, we are going to fire into the Crypt Ghouls over here to possibly cause a chain reaction for retreating into a friendly unit, as the ghouls can suffer morale. So 4 dice, getting 2 hits, which is not enough to do damage, but the Crypt Ghouls will make a morale test, or a command test. And a 4 will pass. Alright, so they are fine. No damage done there, as they are armor 3. So next up, this crossbowman unit will fire into the Grave Guard over here as well. 4 shots, making nothing, no hits. All the crossbow bolts fly into the trees and bounce off the old ruins. So with that, we come to the end of round 1. On to round 2. And here we are at the end of round 2's attacker movement phase. Over here, the Crypt Ghouls have moved forward at full force, heading towards the Foot Knights and Crossbowmen. Had to spend 1 mighty deed to get them to move, while the Ghoul Vampire moved up to prepare for a single combat with the General Calbrook if he decides to land. Meanwhile, over here, my Spectres charged into the Knights, with my Graveguard moving forward to flank them. And then my Skeletons were unable to make their second movement, and I don't want to spend any mighty deeds to get them to move, as I'm going to spend all 3 of them on a spell. I'm going to try to cast, what is it called? Weakness on the knights. So on a roll of 2 or above, it'll pass. And it just manages to pass. And that will reduce the knights down to armor 3 for the rest of the game, or until the Necromancer is slain. So that's that. And then on the right flank, my Graveguard push forward, not quite getting into engagement range with the crossbowmen, and the skeletons made their double movement as well. So that is that, and there is no skirmish fire, so we will now go into combat. Alright, Spectres and the Knights are the only combat we have for the attackers. But before that, I'm going to try to countercharge with the Calon Knights. So, command test. A 2. I think that'll fail. Let me double check. But regardless, if it doesn't, we'll just spend a Mighty Deed with the General there and get a pass. So I'll double check, make sure 2s are a fail. I believe they are. But besides that, they will get a counter charge and get their reroll 1s. Alright, I was correct. 2s are a fail, so the General spent a command point or a Mighty Deed to reroll that. So we continue on with the combat. 12 dice with the Spectres, re-rolling 1s. No 1s to re-roll. But a decent roll nonetheless, getting a total of 6. And there is no support saves. So because of their weakened state, they'll take 2 stamina point losses on the Knights, which is a heavy blow to them. So they will try to repay the damage in kind. Also, no 1s to reroll. But they do get Thunderous Charge, so 4s will go to them. And unfortunately, they only do 3 points of damage, which is not enough for the armor 4 Spectres. So the Knights take 2 points of stamina loss damage, and they will now retreat half a spear throw, as they are fearsome as well. And then, so the Spectres do massive damage to the Knights after the Necromancer successfully weakens that unit. General Calonbrook, seeing this, knows that he has to end that Necromancer's life. So, with that, we go to Defender's movement phase. Alright, here we are at the end of Hydd Calon's movement phase. Over here on the right flank, the Foot Knights charged into combat with the ghouls, while the militia peasants are behind them, backing them up. And over here, my crossbowmen turn to face the cryptors that are proceeding to charge into the deployment zone. And then my sorceress is going to spend 3 reputation to cast enchant on these cryptors. And on a 3, it is successful. So they will only be able to move once on their next turn, and they cannot shoot or charge into combat. So hopefully that will benefit me. And then over here, my Knights did retreat half a spear throw, but the Spectres pursued them, as they are forced to. And then General Calonbrook proceeded to charge into the Necromancer, and the Necromancer, being a coward in combat, proceeded to evade into the skeleton unit. But that was all according to Calonbrook's plans, as his Pegasus Knights came in to flank them from behind. So that will hopefully leave the Necromancer without his bodyguard at the end of their combat. They are performing a swooping attack on them. Actually, you know what? We will do a ground attack to get the benefit of a flanking rear charge, as I think that'll give them the most benefits. Actually, you know what? No. We're going to do the thunderous... we're going to do a swooping attack to get the thunderous charge, which will give them 4s to hit, which would be better. Alright, so that's finalized. And then over here, these Foot Knights charge into the graveyard. And then had to spend some mighty deeds for that from the captain, while the militia turned to face the other threat coming their way. And crossbowmen stayed put, as I don't believe they can move out of the kill zone from the graveyard. So they're just going to be firing at point blank at the graveyard before they are charged next turn. So with that, we will now go into combat. First up, we will start with the Foot Knights fighting the ghouls. So they have 12 combat dice plus 2 for spears as tribute. So hitting on 5s, re-rolling 1s. There's 1, 1. Getting a modest total of 6, which will be enough to do 2 damage to the crypt ghouls, but they do have 2 support dice from the ghouls behind them. Managing to get none. So that is good for the Foot Knights. Alright, and then the ghouls will strike back with 12 dice of their own. Getting a total of just 3. So that will do 1 point. Well, let's do 2 support saves for the militia behind them. No. So yeah, that'll do 1 point of damage to the Foot Knights, but they will inflict 2 damage to the ghouls in return. And they will fall back half a spear throw into the ghouls behind them. So they will make a command test and fail. So we'll spend another with this Vampire Lord. Passing. So they will not take any damage from being retreated into. Alright, moving on. And here they are after falling back. The Foot Knights decided to pursue them. So they will continue that. And then we move on to the Knights versus the Spectres. Things aren't looking very good for the Knights. So they will have 5 dice now, as they reduce to below half their stamina points. So they only get 5 dice, combat dice. Needing 5s. Only managing to get 2. Resulting in no support saves and no damage for the Spectres. And then the Spectres will get 12 attacks with re-rolling 1s, as they are winning. Quite a few 1s here. We got 3. And that is enough to wipe out those Knights with 2 reputation, or 2 stamina point damage. And that will inflict 3 reputation lost on the Kingdom of Hydd Calon, bringing them down to 6 as the knights get eviscerated from the specters. Alright, on to the next combat. Alright, a devastating loss of the knights from the specters, but the Pegasus Knights will attempt to catch the Necromancer out by charging the skeletons in a swooping dive. So this will be their second and last sweeping or thunderous sweep attack, giving them re-rolling or hitting on 4s, and then obviously re-rolling 1s for the charge. So 10 dice. We have 1, giving them another hit for a total of 7. And they are armor 2, so I'll be doing 3 damage total to them. They will have no support saves, and with only 2 reputation, or no, 4 stamina. So yeah, so they'll take 3 damage, and unfortunately they will not be destroyed as they have 1 stamina point left. Meanwhile, the skeletons will be striking at half, losing 6, and then 3 extra for the Necromancer as he is attached. And they only do 2 damage in return, which is not enough. And then, because it is a swooping attack, there is no retreating involved, so the skeletons survive. So, funny enough, if I would have charged them on the ground, the skeletons are not able to retreat, so they would have taken a point of stamina loss instead of retreating. So that could have worked out in my favor, but oh well. So with that, the Pegasus Knights will then make a full movement, probably going that way to defend the borders. Next up, and for the final combat of the Kingdom of Hydd Calon, the Foot Knights are fighting the Graveguard. So 12 dice plus 2 for Spears' Tribute, and re-rolling 1s for the charge. 14 dice for the Graveguard as well with their Spears' Tribute. So, Foot Knights first. Re-rolling 1s. We got a few 1s here. For a total of 6 hits on them, and then they will get 2 support saves for the Spectres being next to them. Getting rid of 1 for a total of 1 point of stamina loss to the Graveguard for 5 hits. And then for the Graveguard, they managed to do 5 damage to the Foot Knights. With their armor 4, that'll do 1 point of stamina, and that will no support saves for them. That'll be a tie battle, so they'll each take a point of damage and remain stuck in combat. And with that, combat phase is done. Actually, I need to do risk to heroes over there. So I believe it'll just be 2 risk to heroes. Let me double check. Yep, 2d6 for the Necromancer, as he is fine. Alright, And that is the end of combat. We will now go to shooting phase, where it is just the Kingdom of Hydd Calon's crossbowmen shooting. Alright, starting with these crossbowmen over here. They are in the kill zone for the Crypt Horrors, so they'll be firing all 8 of their dice into the Crypt Horrors. Ooh. That is just 3 hits, which is unfortunately not enough to do damage, I don't think. Let me double check here. Armor 4, yep. Unfortunately, they do not do enough damage to pierce them. But they will then have to make a morale test. Passing, so they will not fall back. Alright. And then it is 8 dice for these crossmen over here into the graveyard. Getting just 2 hits, which is not enough damage. 1 risk to heroes, which is fine. And then they will make no command tests as they don't fall back from shooting. Alright. And that is all for the Kingdom of Hydd Calon. And we now go to turn 3. Alright, and here we are at the end of the attacker's movement phase. The undead have completed their movements. So the ghouls over here remain in combat, and the other ghouls are staying to provide support. While the Crypt Horrors over here made a successful command test and rotated towards the crossbowmen. And then my Spectres moved forward twice at the cost of a command point or a mighty deed for the Necromancer. The Vampire Ghoul charged into combat with General Callenbrook, and he is no shy to refusing a single combat, so he obliged the Ghoul Vampire. And then following over here, these guys are in combat, and at the Graveguard over here, charged into combat as well, into the crossbowmen. So, and then my Necromancer is going to spend his 2 remaining mighty deeds to perform Raise the Dead on the skeletons. So, this will be 2 separate command tests to try to give them more stamina. And that is 2 successes, so they will gain 2 stamina back. Bring them back to 1. So they are almost healed up, back to where they were. And that is the end of the movement. So, with that, we'll go into combat. And starting off the combat phase, we will start with the single combat from General Callenbrook and the Vampire Ghoul. Both getting 3 dice, and both are going to spend 3 dice to add additional combat with their mighty deeds. So both getting 6 in the first round of combat, re-rolling 1s for both. The Vampire Ghoul has Battle Smiter, so he will get +1 combat die, and he is armor 3 while Callenbrook has armor 4. So we'll see if that makes a difference. So starting with, and then the Vampire Ghoul got a point of reputation for charging the army commander. So let's go ahead and roll that off. No 1s to re-roll, and a lot of hits. Everything hits. Wow. That's 4 hits on the commander. And then I don't think there's anything he can do now. So he kind of loses this. Taking 1 point of damage. Alright. Rerolling ones for Calonbrook. Nothing. Just managed to get 2 hits, not even doing a damage. So Calonbrook will lose the first round of combat. And let me check. Let's see. Let me double check the combat results to see what happens. Alright, so after double checking the table, if the result is, if the number of hits is if it equals or exceeds the losing hero armor's armor value, if the difference in hits exceeds, then the hero is outright. So Calonbrook got 2 hits, while the vampire got 7, with the difference of 2 still meeting his armor. So Calonbrook is struck down by the vampire ghoul. His his brash bravado not saving him from the vampire ghoul as he latches on to Calonbrook's throat, ripping it out completely. And that is a massive blow to the kingdom. So that will lose. That'll make a total of 5 reputation lost as Calonbrook is slain, which will reduce the Kingdom of Hydd Calon down to 1 reputation point remaining, as their commander is slaughtered on the battlefield in single combat. That is massive. And then I believe the undead will get some reputation points from that. Alright, so with the vampire ghoul's slaying of General Calonbrook, I will roll on the hero death table. And a 3 will be food for the ravens. Dead. Lose reputation tokens equal to the hero's reputation. Okay. So yeah. The Kingdom of Hydd Calon loses 5 reputation, bringing them down to 1. While the ghoul vampire gains 2 reputations for his undead army. So that is a massive blow to the human forces. And then with that, we'll continue on with the rest of the combat. Okay, next up we have the ghouls fighting the foot knights. The foot knights are no longer within range of their support, so they'll get no support dice, but the crypt ghouls are only fighting with half their dice for a total of 6. Getting a total of 3 hits, which is not enough to do any damage, as they are armor 4, I believe. And then 12 dice for the foot knights. Oh, and they rolled horribly, only getting 1 in return. So, no damage done from either. And then the ghouls win the combat, so the foot knights will fall back, have a spear throw, and be pursued by the ghouls. Alright, over here, the ghouls pursued. And I actually had to make a command test to fall back. They had to fall back 1 spear throw because of the fear. So they fell back into the militia, and I had to spend a mighty deed to make them pass, so they didn't lose any stamina. So next up is the Grave Guard versus the Foot Knights. They are even in combat so far, so 12 dice for each. Starting with the Foot Knights. And we have a total of 4. And then 2 support saves for the graveyard. Nothing. So they will take 4 damage, which will do 1 point of stamina loss on them. And then the graveyard swinging back. And they, looks like they did just a little bit better. Yes, they did. And then, so no support saves for the Foot Knights either. So, both do 1 point of damage to each other. As the Graveyard Armor 3 and the Foot Knights are Armor 4. So, 1 point of damage for each. Foot Knights will fall back 1 half or full spear throw and then be pursued by the Graveyard. Moving on. Alright, and lastly over here we have the Graveguard into the Crossbowmen, who are only fighting at armor or combat 8, while the Graveguard will be fighting at 12 combat dice, plus 2 for Spears of Tribute, and 2 more for the mighty deeds of the hero. On top of 2 more for the hero, as the vampire is going to attempt to annihilate the crossbowmen in one go. Alright, and then that leaves the dice roll. For the crossbowmen, they have 2 hits, not enough to do any damage, 2 support saves, canceling 1 out for the Graveyard. And then the Graveguard is coming in hot with a ton of attacks, re-rolling 1s for the charge. That is massive. Nothing there. For a total of 2, 3, 4 stamina loss on the crossbowman. That's 9 total damage or total hits. And then crossbowmen are 3 actually. So for a total of 3 stamina loss on the crossbowmen, giving them 1 left. So they are not dead yet, but they are close. So then they will fall back. 1 spear throw. Followed up by the Graveguard, keeping in contact with them. And that is the end of the attackers' combat phase. Things are looking very desperate indeed for the Kingdom of Hydd Calon. Let's see what they do. Alright, and here we are at the end of the Defenders movement phase. The 2 remaining heroes, seeing their commander fall, have resorted to desperate measures. My sorceress over here deciding to make a reckless charge into the Crypt Horrors to try and gain some reputation back, as did the captain over here, charging the Graveyard, backing up the Foot Knights to try and gain back some leverage. Meanwhile, over here, my Pegasus Knights charged the Spectres in the rear to hopefully get some damage on them. And over here, my Militia rotated and charged the Graveguard in the flank. So they'll get full combat dice. And then my Militia moved up to support the Foot Knights over here. And that is the end of my movement phase. I gained 2 reputation tokens for my heroes charging into combat. So with that, let's get to fighting. Starting over here with the Foot Knights into the ghouls. 12 dice. No rerolls. Hitting on 5s. And that is a sad poultry 2 hits on them. And then we got 6 dice for the ghouls. They are winning, so they will get to reroll 1s. Getting a total of 2 hits as well. And then 2 support saves. Actually, 4 support saves with the crossbowman. Managing to block 1. That'll reduce theirs to 1. Gaining the victory to the foot knights. And the ghouls will have to fall back half a spear throw. They will not lose any stamina as they don't have the relentless trait. But I will push them back nevertheless. Alright, next combat over here is the sorceress. I'm going to spend 2 mighty deeds to add extra combat dice for a total of 5 versus 10 for the crypt horrors. Actually, yes, they are no longer enchanted, so I don't know if they would have any negative effects if they were enchanted. So they just have 10 dice as well. So starting with the sorceress, getting just 1 rerolling. Just 1. Just 1 hit on the crypt horrors. This might have been a mistake as the sorceress has armor 2, but I really needed some reputation tokens. Alright, crypt horrors. Only getting 2 hits in return. Which will do 1 point of stamina loss on the sorceress. But she will live and fall back half a spear throw. Alright, the crypt horrors decided to pursue the sorceress in her terror after taking a wound, which might cost the Kingdom of Hydd Calon the game. But we'll see. Those foot knights over there decided to hold their ground instead of pursuing the ghouls. In hindsight, might have been a bad idea. I should have just pursued them to get that, to prevent them from getting a charge. But regardless, over here, the Pegasus Knights are attempt to do some damage on these specters. So they have 10 attack dice, and then the Crypt Horrors will have 7, or the Specters will have 7, as they're being charged in the rear. So, Pegasus Knights getting a decent roll, nothing to re-roll. Giving them 5 hits, which will do 1 damage to the Specters. They don't have any support saves. And then Specters striking back, getting 1, or a total of 3 hits on the Pegasus Knights, which will, no, not do any damage if they're armor 4 as well. So the Pegasus Knights win that fight. Specters taking a point of damage. They will have to fall back half a spear throw. And they cannot fall back because they're relentless. So they'll immediately take another point of stamina loss as the Pegasus Knights remain in combat. Alright. As they were not doing a swooping charge. So with that, we move on to the next one. Next up, we have these Foot Knights versus the Grave Guard, and supported by the Captain. So they're at half combat dice. So they have a total of 6, and then half of the Captain gives them 1 additional combat dice. And then it is 6 for the Grave Guard as well. And we have 2 for the Foot Knights, not doing any damage. And then 2 for the Graveguard as well, also not doing any damage. And then risk to hero, nothing. Alright, so with that, it is a stalemate over here with no damage from either side. And then we move on to the last combat. Alright, we have a boatload of dice for the crossbowmen and militia as they are hitting the flank, which will reduce the Graveguard down to half while getting their full attacks for the militia. So the black dice will be the militia getting their reroll ones as they charged, getting a decent haul there. For a total of 6, 7, 8, 9. Really good for the militia, getting that flank charge on the Graveguard, and they are not within range to provide support saves. And then we'll do some risk to heroes after. So we have 7 dice, common dice for the Graveguard, plus what do we got here? Plus 3 for the hero. They are also winning, so they will get reroll ones. And they will get 5 hits. And then I believe the I'm assuming the winner decides, or the charge decides who the dice go to. Let me double check the rules on that. Alright, the crossbowmen are the primary target as they have the most frontage in contact with the Graveguard. So this 5 damage will, 3 of them will go into the crossbowmen, wiping them out, suffering another 3 reputation lost for the Hydd Calon, bringing them to 0. And then 2 go to the militia, which will deal 1 point of stamina damage to them as well, as they are only armor 2. While the Graveguard will suffer 1, 2, 3 points of stamina damage, which is not enough to kill them. And then I have to check for risk to heroes. They suffered 9 hits, which will be 3d6 for the risk to heroes. As the sorcerer takes, or the vampire takes 1 point of stamina damage, leaving her on 1 point as well. The Graveguard will lose the combat and have to fall back, which will just make it simple and say they turn to face while the militia pursue. And then that is the end of the combat. For the defenders, leaving us with the shooting phase, and unfortunately the crossbowmen have no targets Well, I could suppose I could shoot at the skeletons. They are in range for 4 crossbowman shots. Doing 3 damage, or 3 hits to the skeletons, which will bring them down or back to 2. And 1 risk to hero for the Necromancer. He passes, so that is not enough to destroy that unit. And that is the end of turn 3. And unfortunately, Hydd Calon is out of reputation points. And with that, General Callenbrook's army collapses from the loss of him on the battlefield, and they will retreat back into the kingdom, and the Necromancer and the undead will push across the border and proceed to wreak havoc on the kingdom. Thanks for watching, guys.